booth, and they will translate this event for you, and they are usually forgotten. Thank you. Okay, so let's start. Platform capitalism, the economic system currently dominating the internet, isn't really working for most people globally. Despite its initial promise as a new commons, the internet now serves primarily really the few and not the many, right? So ordinary users retain little control over their personal data and have no say about what happens on internet platforms that they rely on most, right? So when you get up in the morning and check your news or your social updates, you have no say about what happens on those platforms at all, right? So platform capitalism really has a monopoly problem. So at its roots lays extreme and growing concentration, right? Network effects that propel financial extraction and surveillance. And with some regularity, we learn about major data breaches, right? From internet giants like Facebook, right? That's in the news almost, every few weeks. So today's internet is free as in labor, not free as in beer, right? So, and more devastatingly, contract work and automation are replacing and augmenting direct employment at every turn, and most rights associated with employments are lost in this kind of market. People from all walks of life are struggling to make a living in that gig economy. So there are platforms like Airbnb, Helpling and Uber, and they really focus on short-term returns and rapid growth, right? To please their investors, right? So, and this extractive model is undermining the social contract, right, between workers and businesses, exacerbating income inequality, bringing it to a level really not seen since the Gilded Age, right? So platform owners externalize the risk of businesses to workers who now also provide the infrastructure. Think, for example, cars and apartments, hotel rooms. Platform owners often nullify federal law and local regulations. And specifically, they are forcing workers to accept gigs as independent contractors, because that means that platforms don't have to offer health insurance, benefits, minimum wage guarantees, workers' compensation, and other essential social benefits that organized labor, right, unions, fought to establish for almost 200 years. Right? So precariousness abound. So these income inequalities don't distribute evenly, right? So they are not the same for everybody. They don't distribute evenly according to socioeconomic status. But given that many gigs are performed by people who are invisible to their customers, right, who at a swipe on their phone clean their apartment, they are basically particularly affecting persons of color and especially women of color, who are seeing less pay, fewer benefits, and hardly any opportunities for meaningful on-the-job training. So their rights as workers have stalled and worse, and the inequalities created by the sharing economy are magnifying the existing systemic racial and gender inequities in pay and economic opportunities. So many non-white platform users remain unprotected against discrimination. In the United States, we see African Americans facing lower acceptance rates for bookings on Airbnb. So if you are a black man in America, you want to rent your apartment out to customers on Airbnb, your acceptance rate is far lower than if you are a white woman, for example. And you also have a much higher likelihood of having your rides canceled before pickup with Uber or Lyft. So persons with disabilities too, so edge populations, right, find themselves left behind by platform capitalism too, with their needs neither considered nor incorporated into the design and implementation of many of these emerging platforms. So despite the newfound fortunes made by many investors and creators of extractive platforms, the users who give actual values to these apps through their data don't co-govern the platform, like I said at the outset. So internet giants collect and control innumerable data points about users in an exchange offer zero transparency for how this information is used, who it is sold to, and for what purpose. So the narrative of these platforms is ushering in a new era of sharing around the globe, but actually obfuscating the real shift at play, which is the monetization and capitalization of nearly every dimension of our lives. So from dating to dishwashing, right? So extractive platforms are reaching into every corner of life, collecting data, and basically all of these platforms being controlled by a number of people that is so small that you could fit them in a single Google bus, right? So despite their continued expansion, investor-backed capitalist platforms dominating today's internet are not as inevitable as they may seem. So the success of Uber is not inevitable. The success of Airbnb is not inevitable, right? While it is true at present that they are rapidly growing, many of them are not making profits, and we've seen online empires collapse before. For those in the audience here, you might remember the collapse of Lotus, Friendster, AOL, MySpace, or Yahoo, or think even of Microsoft and how they lost out to the open internet. So there's nothing inevitable about the direction of technological process. There's nothing inevitable about the success of platform capitalism itself. So worldwide, in the face of widespread dissatisfaction with capitalism and in the face of alarming income inequality driven increasingly by capitalist platform, it's time to ask collectively, what kind of new economy do we want to create? Right? And at this point, following Angela Nahles' prompt, I will take my jacket off and move to the other. She said it would be okay, so I will do this. Oh, and she's taking it. Oh my God. Okay. Okay, so 6 minutes into this talk, instead of streamlining the online economy for growth and short-term profits for the few, we need to optimize the online economy for workers and all people. So platform-Kooperativism, and you should try to say that a few times fast, a concept that I developed in 2014 after working on digital labor for almost a decade, was popularized by countless people around the world, but chiefly by Nathan Schneider, professor at the University of Colorado. And platform cooperativism is applying the 200-year-old history of cooperatives, so its lessons, its principles, and best practices to the digital economy, right? So what happens when you put co-ops and the internet together, and what comes out of that is completely unclear. We just don't know, right? So it's a new field of research. It's a new field of practice. We don't know what will happen. The exciting moment. So the social and economic form of cooperatives, though, can become a key intervention in the digital economy, and they must really be considered when you think about the future of work, right? So cooperatives need to be considered when you think about the future of work and of the digital economy. So co-ops at the same time have to recognize their important role in the process of digitization. So I assume you probably know what a cooperative is, but just to sort of hone in on this term platform, which is more blurry, right? So think of it as an online application or a website. Maybe for the more technically inclined, think of it even as a protocol, right? Holochain, blockchain. And it's used by individuals or groups to connect to one another or to organize services. And then platform cooperativism is a growing movement to cooperativize online businesses, now including some over 240 projects around the world that build on these values by establishing 4 key principles. So number 1, this is about broad-based platform ownership, which means that the stakeholders, the people who depend on that platform, not just the workers, but also the users, or co-own this platform. Number 2, democratic governance, so in which all stakeholders and workers who own the platform collectively self-govern the entity, so add a one worker, one vote principle. And thirdly, co-design of the platform, where instead of the Silicon Valley approach, this waterfall approach, where you have the ego designer that passes on his genius to the masses, you here design with the workers from day one and create something that really reflects their needs, right? And then number 4, a commitment to open source development so that platform co-ops can build new structures of collective ownership and democratic governance internally and don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again, right? So in short, in the same way cooperatives started many years ago to reverse the devastating effects of unbridled capitalism and fought to ensure the market served humans and not the other way around, so too do platform co-ops challenge the status quo. And just like in 1844, when cooperatives started, some see these co-ops solely as a matter of economic survival, and others really see it as a way to bring down capitalism, right? So this tension exists still today. Whichever way you look at it, platform co-ops place people at the center and allow worker owners to set their own objectives for business. And through distributed ownership, platform co-ops ground the digital economy democratically through a set of fundamentally new business models that for the first time puts workers and users ahead of profits and stockholders. So none of this is, like I said, an academic pipe dream. It's already here. So there's an ecosystem of people experimenting with this form from Brazil to Switzerland, Germany, India, Canada, East Asia, the United States. And you can go to the website platform.coop, and there's a directory where you can see some of these projects. There are various types. I wish you can I could project some beautiful slides here and show you some of the examples to make this a bit more real for you and not so abstract. But just to give you a few examples, there is a producer platform co-op called Stocksy that has over 1,000 photographers who cooperatively own a platform and made $11 million last year with that form. There are platform worker co-ops like Green Taxi, Co-Rise, or Up and Go. There are data platform co-ops like MyData and Social.coop. And there are mutual risk cooperatives like Smart, and there's an office just right here in Berlin. And all of them are proving the sustainability and resiliency of this new business model, right? So, but this model is ready for implementation into many, many industries, right? So first of all, it is ready to be implemented in elder care, right? Altenpflege, childcare, food delivery, trash pickup, short-term rentals, data entry, childcare, home repairs, social media, and even higher education or transportation. So just imagine an international trade union organizing a global taxi platform that is cooperatively owned. So how are these platforms different from traditional business as usual approach of platform capitalism? So I'm often asked by Silicon Valley types, they would say, well, so how does this distinguish itself from what we have already? And you can very clearly point to a better job quality and security, right? So a business like that is not likely to outsource to China, for example. An inclusive design that respects the needs of the workers. Workers' formal inclusion in the governance of the enterprise, value creation not just for workers, but for the community. And they also exhibit, like all employee-owned businesses, by the way, a greater productivity among the workers. There's much research on that. They also demonstrate, and we saw this post-2008, a greater resiliency. So where many businesses closed, co-ops stayed open. So in these unsteady markets, they are more resilient. And they encourage workers to organize, not just in the workplace, but in their communities and also around larger political issues. So often overlooked, right? Cooperators are everywhere. The Spanish Mondragon Cooperative is just one example. They started in 1956 as a small co-op and has some 74,000 workers in numerous industries from finance to auto parts manufacturing today. Successful cooperatives like Mondragon often are very visible, But in Germany, right, I mean, when you look at Rewe or Edeka or the Volksbanken system, they're all established cooperative businesses. You may even add like Raiffeisenbanken, right? But I don't know if they make your heart beat faster, right? I kind of doubt it. So what's really needed, right, is a return of the core identity of these businesses, really to care for those who need it most, right, for the weakest members of society. And they also need to support younger, emerging cooperatives to basically facilitate and take part in this process of pushing cooperatives into the digital economy. So in Germany, you have almost 20 million people in co-ops. In India, 239 million. In Canada and France, almost 40% of the population are co-op members. In the US, it's every third person is a co-op member. So Brazil, 77.6 million people are in co-ops. So despite the continued Uberization of society with fissured workplaces, the socialization of risk, and the increasing atomization of the worker, right? So they sit in their Starbucks and type away, and there is no cafeteria anymore that you could organize, right? Where a union could step in and organize them. So what do? So despite all these inevitable pessimists, right, I think it is clear that there will not just be one business model that will dominate, right? There will not just be the Silicon Valley model, but there will also be other models. There has to be a diversified digital economy. So platform co-ops are really about labor on the one hand, and also about building infrastructure. So this is clear when you go out past your beautiful still in progress airport, right, BER, and your signal is leaving you, right, on your phone, and you realize, like, oh my God, right, how is this possible in Germany? Well, in the US, we have the same problem. It's called the last mile problem, and 47% of electricity is delivered by cooperatives for that reason, right, because there is a problem, right, in infrastructure. So cooperatives have a place there here too. Okay, so in the last minute and a half, I will just focus on a little project that we started to actually do something about this, right? So we got a grant from Google and homed at basically together with the Inclusive Design Center in Toronto, started to work on the Platform Co-op Development Kit, which basically makes it easier for all these groups that approach us all the time who want to start these projects. We can basically point them to that, and it will help them, right? So we're working on a global narrative that will help to convince people that of the role of co-ops in that economy, but we are also building tools. And so we're working with 5 groups. There's one of 3,000 babysitters in Illinois looking for an onboarding, labor, and purchasing platform. We're working with Saver in Ahmedabad, India, where the women, I just met them 2 weeks ago, are now in training to start a beauty platform to bring beauty services to people's houses, so hair and massage and threading, through the joining for very poor self-employed women, organized in a co-op, basically delivering these services to people's homes. In Brazil, we are working with garbage recyclers who make up 90% of that economy. And in Germany, we started to work with Rethink Co-op. Claudia Henke is sitting right here. And to work with Syrian, Albanian, and Iranian women to offer a platform co-op for childcare services and possibly elder care. And then in Australia, we are working with elder care, social care cooperative. So we started just a bit over 3 years ago. And so what started just about 3 years ago is now an international movement with hundreds of businesses. Our next big festival is in Hong Kong in 3 weeks, where we try to bring this to Asia. And so to adequately respond, we really need to, all of you, right, to somehow get involved in this. We need policymakers, we need union leaders, we need dedicated cooperative workers, and of course we also need the government, right, the SPD, and innovative philanthropists as well, tireless activists, rigorous students and thinkers, everyone who's involved in building a fairer future of work and a more democratic internet is called upon. So Support is needed for the building of an international network of legal experts to support these legal needs of platform co-ops. To that end, we started a cyber law clinic at Harvard Law School and tried to build a network like that, hopefully also here with presence here in Germany. There are sister organizations in Hong Kong, Japan, Germany. But we are still in need of more institutions and funders to support workers who need us most. So much work remains to be done, and we need your support through words and through deeds, right? So we need support for platform co-ops, support for this development kit, support for experimental spaces, incubator for grassroots innovators in this field. We need investment funds for the digital cooperative economy. We need support for curriculum that introduces this model into schools, business schools, law schools, and statewide curriculum. So I'm ending here just by saying that, if I sort of close my eyes and imagine the economy in 30 years, I know that we will still be here, right? So this will still be around. But how big it will be and how significant, that's really up to all of us. Thank you.